Thank you guys for coming to our social media for startups session. I'm Renea and I work at GROWL agency. So we're a marketing technology agency in downtown Grand Junction. And I'm really excited to do this session. Social media is one of my passions, and it's just something that I love to help people grow and really dive into the intricacies, because it's more than just posting, it's more than just a platform to follow. So we're going to go into a lot of different things that hopefully will help your startup, your small business, or even if it's just like you want to help brand yourself. So just a little bit about me. I have lived in the Grand Valley for 5 years now. I'm originally from New Mexico. I've been working at GROWL for about a year and a half, and I help lead our content team and our social media team. So it's an awesome group of people. For all of GROWL, and we really dive into our clients, their strategy, what they want to accomplish, and taking it away. So a little bit about me, and if you guys want to introduce yourselves in the chat so we can all be interactive, and I really would like this to be more of a conversation, because I'm sure you guys have your own experiences with social media or your own questions. So there'll be a little bit of fun stuff throughout, but totally introduce yourselves in the chat, drop any questions throughout. Greg will let me know about any questions that you guys have. We'll do a Q&A at the end as well. All right. So first off, I wanted to talk about why you might use social media, because a lot of times there are small businesses or startups that don't quite know what they should do on social, or they've only used it personally. Or there's the other end of the spectrum where some smaller businesses and startups think they only should have a Facebook rather than a website as well. So a few of the key reasons why your startup should have social. One, it's going to help increase your reach, and that's how many people you're going to be like engaging with or touching, and have a major increase to your exposure. So not only will social media help you reach a new audience, but it'll help you reach a larger one. And that's one of the most critical aspects of growing your business, growing your social platforms themselves, is expanding that reach and kind of connecting. So that drives into building your community. So we talk a lot about brand community and like tribal marketing, and developing those kind of cohorts of consumers who we want to engage with. And that's what this community is. Social media is inherently built on community. It's a place for people to connect, for people to connect with businesses, and just have like your real life interactions on a digital level. So whenever you start your social media marketing plan for your startup, for your small business, one thing you always need to keep in mind is building and connecting that community. So with that community, you also want to consider that social media is another form of search. So the platforms like Facebook and Instagram have their own internal ways of, like, similar to Google search engine optimization. It's kind of the same, but within their own platforms. So when you build this community and you use different keywords, you're going to be able to connect with a lot more. So a lot more people. So that connection, you want to make sure it's two-way. So you don't want to just be on social promoting yourself or posting a lot of posts and not interacting. That engagement is so fundamental to building the community, connecting the community. Just thinking about marketing in general, when we talk about like customer relationship marketing and really honing in on those relationships, that's where social media comes in. And that's one thing that I'm very passionate about, is using social media to drive your community versus focusing it on driving sales. Because if you're very, very salesy on social, you're not going to have those connections and you're not going to have that community. And then the last big thing is for collaboration. So the more that you're on social as a business, you want to focus your business as its own brand and with its own personality, tone of voice, all of those characteristics that you would have as a person. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But with that collaboration factor, once you bring in who you are as a brand, you can create connections with other businesses. So you might not know someone personally at another business, but you connect on social media, brand to brand. And that can help really drive local collaborations and really extend your reach again and build your community even more so. And those kind of collaborations will really be long lasting and help develop a longer customer and even brand to brand relationship. So just a quick example for those collaborations and community building. At GROWL, we do a lot of community involvement, and we post a lot about like what's going on locally. We share different events. Even if we're not like monetarily invested, we want to promote our community because we care about it. And with that, we've been able to get to know a lot of other local businesses through like Instagram, them reaching out and saying like, hey, thanks for sharing this. And then those growing into something bigger than just a like or just a comment. So step one of diving into your social for your startup would be auditing. So in the workbook, if you guys were able to look at it or download it from the link that got sent out last night, the first step in there is auditing your accounts. And why I like to conduct audits, whether it's a new client or a new platform that we're going on, we're starting Instagram TV, or we're taking on a new account, or even we're creating one from scratch, it helps you understand where you're at and where you need to be. So through looking at every single factor of social, you're gonna identify your areas of improvement. You're gonna see, we're doing this really, really well, and let's keep doing it. Or you're going to be able to understand like, our audience is X and we're reaching Y. So then you're gonna find out like, how can we fix this? Additionally, your audits are gonna help build that foundation for growth. So throughout the year, I recommend auditing quarterly. That way you can track like when you first started your accounts or when you first took over at a new business or whatever, you were at X amount of followers, this engagement rate, nothing was consistent. And now you can see everything's consistent, you have way more followers. So it really helps show that data and that progression. So just a couple other things with the audit. A good audit is very in-depth. You go through the back end of your pages, you look at them side by side, you look at your website. It's kind of like looking at a SWOT analysis on steroids. So with that, if you guys were able to go through that first part of the audit in the workbook, I want to open it up to any questions that you might have. So feel free to throw them in the chat or unmute. Sorry. Maybe. If there weren't any questions, we can move on.
You know, hey, Renee, this is Greg. So I think I don't see any questions. Maybe let's see here, going through. Can you share, I'll share the workbook with the attendees again. I wasn't signed up last week, so I'll get that to them. Yeah. So maybe we talk a little bit. I don't know if I have it here. We could show it, but I mean, what kind of things are you looking for when you go through an audit? I think you're going to talk about that. And that way, if anybody wants to reach back out to us, we could kind of give them some hints or tips. And again, it's kind of that monotonous type of task that we have to go through. But I know you're going to talk about that. But if anybody has any questions, we can open it up even later. But I'll post it in the message section here, and we can make sure everybody gets it.
Yeah, so when you do an audit, what I really like to focus on is first looking at just that like higher level of your pages. Are they all the same name? Do they all have the same handle? Like how you can add a handle on Facebook. You want it to be consistent with what you have on Instagram and Twitter. So something like GROWL agency or GROWL underscore agency across the platforms versus like marketing at GROWL. That's going to be different than somebody searching GROWL agency. So those kind of things for consistency, looking at and seeing if like your branding is the same. Do you have correct logos, correct colors? Is your voice consistent across all the platforms? Do all your links work? And then even if you have like a learn more, or on Instagram you have just a single link, is that where you want to drive people to? And then when you're on Facebook, you can open that like back end and go through all the settings. I make sure that everything is right. There are different types of pages that you can have on Facebook. So making sure if you have one that's for a restaurant, but you are a different type of company, like you're a nonprofit, making sure you have the correct page template. And then going through and assessing those sidebar kind of like navigation tabs that you have on Facebook. If you're not running events or if you don't have any job postings, you can turn them off, and then you can always turn them back on. So making sure that everything is very clean and represent your brand the way you want it to be represented. So Greg sent the link in the chat, so you guys grab the little workbook and definitely reach out if you have any questions going through that. So the next thing, for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to really focus on strategy, content development, and some data, and really hone in on Facebook and Instagram, because those are two of the main platforms that can be used for pretty much every type of industry, and those are going to be your main platforms as a startup and as a small business. All right, so first things first, for strategy, my three things, like strategy 1, 2, 3, is optimize your pages. So in your workbooks, there's a whole step-by-step to go through making sure your Facebook and Instagram are set up correctly. On the landing page link that Greg sent for our GROWL West Slope Startup Week page, we have a couple other resources there for if you want to optimize your Instagram and it's already existing. There's a whole step-by-step guide to make sure everything is set up correctly so you can have the maximum like return on using your Instagram. But after going through an audit, always optimize. With your quarterly audits and changing like profile pictures, cover photos, our story, that all fits into that optimization. So this is just, if you think of, every quarter you want to give yourself a little refresh, that's what this is. Second is going to be understanding why you're on social media. Why is your brand here? What's your brand's purpose? And then setting goals as to how you can achieve this purpose. So if your purpose is to connect people and provide like marketing resources, that's what we're going to really focus on for our posting. And we're going to set goals of how we can achieve it through sharing content that's more tip driven, or blogs or articles, those kind of things. So on this slide, I talk about SMART goals, and SMART goals are more than just a one line where you say, my goal is to reach 500 followers. SMART goals are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, and they're time bound. So this is a goal that you would set that you're specifically saying how many followers you want to reach or what percentage you want to grow. It needs to be measurable. That's kind of like the percentage or that numerical factor versus I want more followers. You would say, I want to grow followers by 50%. Then that attainable is, you need to kind of self-reflect here of what can you actually achieve? Where are your resources? And what can you physically do? If you say you want to grow your followers by 5,000%, it's probably not going to be that attainable if it's just like you and you're posting once a month. So you want to focus on what can you truly achieve. And then which I realized I didn't say, is they're relevant. they need to be related to your brand and your overall marketing goals. So if your goal is to grow followers, that needs to tie back to how is that going to help your brand overall? It's going to help with awareness or growing brand perception. And then time bound, you need to set some deadlines. I know I personally work way better with deadlines than just like, hey, let's do this someday, because that someday could be tomorrow, next week, next year. So if you have, I want to grow followers by 10% within 6 months, then you are able to set benchmarks and gauge where you're at, evaluate how you can improve, or adjust if you have already exceeded your goal or you don't think you're going to reach your goal. So that's that part of why are you there, and those SMART goals of how can you achieve and really foster your purpose. Then the last 101 of strategy is knowing. You need to know who your audience is, and you need to use platform data and who they are to talk to them. So what I was talking about before, building that community on social media, is you're talking to and you're talking with your audience. You're not just talking at them. You're not selling at them. So by knowing who your audience is, you're able to have those conversations. You're able to have that two-way engagement that really takes everything up a notch, rather than just posting about, we're having a sale, everything's 20% off, and that's it. You need to have that conversation of like, hey, how can we help you? And allow open conversation, allow consumers and your followers to comment back, and then you respond. So that's that talking to rather than talking at. And yeah, if there are any questions so far, just feel free to ask throughout. All right, so quick little activity. Share in the chat what your purpose is. So either pick Facebook or Instagram, because your purpose per platform can differ. Indicate which platform, your business, and what your purpose on that platform would be. So for example, on Instagram for GROWL, we're really focused on community and culture and driving those connections. Whereas on Facebook, we do a lot more of promoting kind of like our services. We do a lot more blogs, sharing events. And while some of those overlap, like the community and a little bit of the culture, it's a little different. So think about which platform you can do either, you can do both, and then why you would want to be on that platform or what your business would be achieving there.
So Renee, as people are kind of thinking about this, not everybody likes to do homework during watching, so you give me homework all the time. So I think, we have all the, and I know you'll kind of talk about this as people are thinking, but it is, every one of these has a different purpose when we work with our different clients. I mean, we're kind of how lead generation and things like that, or like LinkedIn, or how Facebook, I think the event side on Facebook, we do a great job just showing that. So I don't know, when you go through that as we wait, we do have a couple. Can you read through those in the comments?
Yeah, no, these are really great so far. So on Facebook, my purpose is to discover knowledge or display, sorry, can't even read today. They're coming in and like scrolling through. Knowledgeable, what is going on? There we go. Display knowledge and services, and interact with other knowledgeable businesses. Instagram, to inform through aha moments and inspire action. Share beautiful environments that our products can be used in, as well as focusing on the product itself, pretty much broken down into amazing landscapes, photography, and then specific hero shots of our product. And then Instagram, purpose is to educate the community on and encourage people to consider multimodal options. Then shelter insurance, purpose is to build awareness of my services, as well as create continuous relationships. So yeah, these are all really, really great. They're coming in so fast, I can't even read them all. These are great. So focusing on your purpose is going to help you determine your content and really drive how your brand grows on social. Because if you think about it and think about everything that we do in marketing and advertising and just in your day-to-day business, if you don't know your why, then you can't really perform. It's kind of like acting without a script. So you guys can keep sending those, and just for the sake of time, I'm going to go on to the next slide. So talking about your purpose, you want to really focus in on that brand personality and the tone of voice. So when we talk about branding, we really focus on brands being people too, pretty much. So if you are a brand, your brand might not have the same personality as you as a person, because you want to focus on that purpose and how it would be communicated. So as a startup, as a small business, just outside of social media, you're going to have those characteristics, those traits, kind of like how you would describe your friend, the tone of voice, and then your visuals that are going to be like what you would wear. This is my brand. So it's the same thing with whatever your brand is in general, breaking it down for social media. Because when you have your brand, you have your brand purpose, your tone of voice, and your personality, then you're going to be able to break it down. So like on Instagram, you might still have the same personality that you have across all platforms, all messaging, but your tone of voice might be a little more fun, a little more sassy, something like that. And that's where that tone of voice and those kind of sets of tones of voice come in. So thinking about your brand, its own personality, its own tone of voice, break this down per platform. Like I was saying, Facebook might be more knowledgeable and Instagram might be more playful. And then you want to keep this consistent through everything you post, whether it be your Instagram bio or every single Instagram post, every single Instagram story. You want to have a consistent tone of voice. Because it's just like if you think of your friend or your family members or even yourself, when you post on social media, you have your own tone of voice throughout everything. And maybe on Facebook, you're a little more, reserved. And then on Twitter, you're wild. And then on Instagram, you're just super fun. It's the same kind of thing, because you're judging who your followers are and where they are and communicating in a manner that they're receiving. So with that kind of consistency across the board, you're going to help drive that connection. And the more authentic your personality, the more authentic your tone of voice, the better that community is and the better those connections are, because they're not going to be forced. They're going to be people, just like when you make friends in real life, those are people that you connect with on a higher level than just they want your product or they want you to help them with something. So it's that kind of same mentality, but for your brand. And then additionally, having this consistency and these connections through the brand personality, the tone of voice being consistent, they're going to help improve your brand perception and awareness, because then people are going to see your brand in a certain light. They're going to see like everybody sees GROWL as very fun or knowledgeable, because if you follow us on social media, we like to have a lot of fun. And that's how people see us. And that's truly how we are. We really focus on that culture and we display it through our social. And we display it through everything. So next, if I can click through. When you go into creating content and developing your strategies for what you're going to post on social, these are just a few quick tips that I like to use and I like to focus on for all of our clients and ourselves. Is first, there's an 80-20 golden rule. We have this in marketing as kind of like the 80% of your sales come from 20% of your customers and driving that loyalty. But on social, it's a little different. We want to focus on splitting that content 80-20. 80% is non-promotional value adding. 20% is more promotional. And this definitely would fluctuate depending on your brand, your followers, and your industry. But in general, keeping it this kind of consistent balance, and that 80% of like non-promotional doesn't mean you can't subtly say like, here's a huge tip, here are 5 other things, and if you need more assistance, contact GROWL. It's saying don't just post only about making sales. And that 20% would be more about driving like, hey, we're launching this new thing, sign up, or hey, we're doing this, buy it, that kind of thing, like new product launch, versus this is how our product can help you, or did you know this is going on in the community. Another fact that really helps drive why your brand is on social media is considering why your followers are there. So in Sprout Social's 2020 Social Index report, they examined a lot of users, a lot of brands, and found that over 70% of social media users follow brands for the entertainment factor. So that kind of goes back to developing your community, having your brand personality, and having your tone of voice, and being authentic. Because if you're being fun and authentic and not salesy all the time, more people are going to follow you and they're going to develop a relationship with you. And those consumer relationships that you develop on social media are more effective when they are relationships versus sales. So with all of that in mind, when you understand your purpose, your personality, and your audience, you can really drive your content strategy and focus on what's going to be successful, what's going to help you achieve your goals, and what your users and followers are going to actually like and engage with. So how I like to do content strategy is breaking up our big ideas into categories. So while I talk through this, I want you to think of your startup or your small business and all of the different things that you could be potentially posting, or everything that you want to post, your goals. Just think of it all, and then we're going to break it down. So when you come into your content for social media, having that consistency and organization is going to help you so much. Because if you know what you're doing and what your strategy is, you can plan for the future and you can continue evolving rather than kind of like fumbling at the moment of like, oh, we should probably post today. You know what you should post, or you already have it ready and scheduled a week in advance. So thinking of all the many things that you could probably post, break it down into categories. So these are just general high-level categories. I like to break it down to 3 to 5. Those are just a little more manageable numbers to work with when you're thinking in terms of social media. Because if you have 3 categories, you could post them, 1 a week. Or if you have 5, that's pretty much 1 a day. But if you have like 10 categories, things get a little messy and something gets left out. So think of those categories really, again, high level, general. So for example, one could be community or like community involvement. Then break down that category into what types of content would fit it. So this would be for GROWL, we share a lot about the community. We share our GROWL abouts, like when we go to an event or when we support a business. We do vibrant togethers to support downtown businesses. We share different events, and we share a weekly calendar. So those are different types of content that fit within one category. So that doesn't mean we need to post all of those content types every single week. It's just helping us understand like, okay, if we want to talk about community this week, here's an idea of something we can post. And then the third step is creating a hashtag that fits each content like group and each category. So for example, for this community category, we'd have like hashtag GROWL in the community. For our GROWL about posts, whenever we go to a business or event, we would do hashtag GROWL about. So it's really focusing all of the things you could do into little categorical buckets. Then that way you can look at this big picture organized and then drive your content strategy. Then you can even look at each category and each content type and see what's performing the best, what's not, what do our followers like, what can we actually, post the best. And then it helps you continue to adapt and evolve your social strategy. So,
Hey, Renee, we had a question. One of the things, and you're talking about the 80-20 and how it works, I think it can work in content categories too. One of the things that someone said, they thought it was about rule of thirds, like personal, product, and reposting other people's content, which is kind of like I know we do like on LinkedIn and things like that we have. So I don't know if you have a comment on that, because we, as you're building out content categories, that's always a struggle, is how much. And many times we look at other people's content to add comments to until we can build up our own. So really that, what is that rule of thirds as opposed to 80-20?
So I think that just boils down to who your brand is. So the way I like to look at it with that like 80-20 rule is these are big picture items, right? 80% should be like something in this community category, or like from the rule of thirds, like personal. Then 20% would have like product or salesy. And the difference between the two is 80-20 breaks down, like you can have that subtle promotion versus really like narrowing of, okay, 1/3 of this should really focus on our product. You can share a tip or a resource and then tie it back to your brand. So that 80-20 rule really helps you kind of position yourself as a leader, a thought leader, and a resource versus just a salesman or just a brand that's out here to say, hey, come support us. You're also supporting your followers. So that's kind of like the way that I've learned social and the way I like to implement it, because I see it more of like really honing in on that community versus kind of splitting it into something that's not promotional and personal, and then focusing on like these ones we have to talk about our product. So that's just kind of like, and the reposting is good. It kind of ties into that 80% of like engaging, and then tying back to like what we talked about at the very beginning, collaborating and supporting your local businesses. But you don't want to like kind of pigeonhole yourself to only want to post or repost other people's content just to kind of get them to follow you. It needs to be genuine. And like, for example, we'll repost stuff from GJEP because we have a really great relationship with them and we want to support their events, or we want to share their events with our followers in our community, versus like forcing it to be part of that, like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Hope that answers the question.
Good job, Renee. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So this whole category content hashtag breakdown is also in the workbook, so you guys can play around with it. And then with all of those categories that you come up with and the different content types, that's how you should make your content calendar. So the way we look at it is planning content in advance is way better than kind of going and planning as you go. So for GROWL, for ourselves and all of our clients, we plan content at least a month in advance. So we know what's coming, what to expect, what might need to change. If there's something that's like potential or TBD, we'll know, but we can at least plan around it. So this is just a week example of a GROWL content calendar. And you can see that we break this down by platform because we have a different purpose for each of our platforms. So you can see like Facebook and Instagram share similar content, like Mental Health Mondays, whereas LinkedIn and Twitter have Marketing Mondays. And days like the 30th, that was National Social Media Day, while we had that same concept on every single platform, we broke up the content to fit our personality per platform. So by that, I mean that on Instagram, it was really fun and we had some puns about social media. On Facebook, it was a little more educational, but still fun. Then on LinkedIn and Twitter, we shared stats about social media and why businesses should use them. So you can kind of see how this was one piece of our content buckets, that we broke up the specific content per platform to meet our goals, to achieve our purpose, to fulfill our brand personality, voice, and interact with our followers. So this kind of example, you definitely don't need to break it down by platform unless you're doing a lot. A lot of the times what we focus on for our clients is you have one concept, but two different pieces of content. So the concept might be 4th of July, and rather than filling it in on every single square here, it would just be a regular calendar square that says 4th of July. But the actual content that we would post is going to be different. The language on Facebook is going to be different than the language on LinkedIn. And that graphic is also going to be different. They might be very similar, but they're going to have something different to them. Because when you're thinking about it, if you follow a brand on social media and they post the same exact thing on Facebook and on Instagram and on LinkedIn and on Twitter, why would you follow them on every single platform? So that's just like one thing that when you're planning your content calendar to think about, is giving followers a reason to follow you on all platforms. So in that same little workbook on our Westslope Startup Week site, there's a little activity so you can kind of fill in based off of your categories and what content might fall in those buckets. Sketch out a month's worth of that content. And it's totally okay to have, like, we do Marketing Monday every Monday on LinkedIn and Twitter. So that's going to be every single Monday on our calendar. But then when we actually create that content, it's not going to be the same like every single Monday. So if anybody has questions about developing their content categories, or content, or go off mute and let us know and we can have a little conversation. So I see one comment about it being lazy when content is the same on every platform. And I agree. I also do want to point out that a lot of the times when you share content, just like auto share from one platform to the other, if you tag anybody, the tags are 99% of the time not the same. So if you post from Instagram and you're tagging other pages and just auto post it to Facebook, it's not going to look up, it's not going to appear the same. Those pages aren't going to actually be tagged, and you're going to have an Instagram structure versus if you posted it for Facebook. All right, so kind of going off of what content to post into data and how that can help you with your posting. I am a huge data nerd. I love looking at the data, and that's how I drive all of our content strategy. Truly, the numbers don't lie, and it really gives you a better idea of what's working. And for me personally, I like to separate kind of like the emotional factor here, so I can look at the data and then see like, okay, maybe this post was my favorite post, but it didn't perform well. So we need to stop doing that or change something. So using the data is going to help you really just like grow your accounts, expand your content. This applies to literally every aspect of marketing. You're not going to run a campaign. You're not going to run like SEO ads or display ads or billboards and disregard any of the data. And most of the time in like a business setting, you're going to need to report that to somebody. Obviously, if you're a startup and you're your own business owner, you don't want to just be wasting money. So looking at data is vital. So the things that are the biggest pieces of data, a lot of people look at likes and comments, which really are superficial metrics, because you could have somebody like every single one of your posts, but they don't actually buy anything, or they don't read it, or you could get 60 comments on something and say like, hey, look, this performed really well. We got 60 comments, but all of them could be negative. So you need to look further than just likes and comments, because most of the time that's just, if you're scrolling through social, you might just like be like, oh, hey, this is cool, like it, and then do nothing, move on with your life. So the pieces of data that you need to always be looking at are reach and impressions. So reach is the number of unique users who view your content or your page. So on Facebook or Instagram, you can see these insights. On Instagram, it's only available on mobile unless you have a like specific Instagram creator account. But on Facebook, you can see it on mobile through the Pages app, or when you're an admin, there's a little tab for Page Insights, and you can see everything. So looking at reach, you want to look at how many people actually viewed your post, and then you can compare that to likes and comments. So you could have gotten, 10 likes on a post and be like, this is great, but then you had 200 people view it. It doesn't make it as great. So looking at reach, again, that's unique users. So I would be one reach, you would be one reach. But impressions is the number of views. So this is how many times anybody looks at your post or your page, regardless. So I could look at a post 5 times and I would be 5 impressions. I would still be one reach. So these are the things that are most important, because they're going to help you understand who you're actually reaching, how often, how many, and how many times people are viewing your content. If you reached like 200 people and you have 10,000 impressions, then those people were going back or they were sending it off. So you have a lot more views. And these are the kind of things that I could talk about data all day, but those are the things that you need to really look at to really differentiate your content and understand what's performing well or what's not. And then the third thing is the engagement rate. So a lot of people calculate engagement rate based off of followers, but truly that's inaccurate, because your followers aren't the only people who view your content. You have people who might view something by the hashtag, or because you tagged another page, or somebody sent it to them, or somebody else shared it. So looking at your engagement rate just by your followers is never going to give you an accurate representation of the rate of engagement. So the best way to do it is with impressions, because then that helps you understand how many engagements you got per view. If on average people viewed your post 3 times before they engaged, or if it was like half a time or whatever it may be, that blank you would fill in with impressions. The other way that you can do this is with reach, and reach will give you a different engagement rate because it'll tell you based off of the number of users. So both of those are very accurate. The only time I recommend calculating an engagement rate by follower is if you're doing competitive research, because you don't have access to their numbers for reach or impressions. So that's going to give you the best idea of what your competitors are doing or how they're ranking. So data is super extensive, but on our West Slope Startup Week page on our GROWL site, which Greg put the link in the chat and we'll put it again, we'll have a little one-pager kind of infographic to help guide you through what metrics you should be looking at, why they matter, and how to use them. And that'll be available after our session today.
Hey, Renee, one of the things we get a lot of questions on is about conversions. And since we're kind of more of a conversion agency and like using social media, a note to, likes doesn't equal sales. And so I just want to lead into that. And I'm interested, and we had like comments and questions come through like, from metrics. And I think we see a lot, if it's done correctly, then you start to see a lot of conversions, which equals sales. So I'm glad you're going to talk about that, because that's, people have questions on not just doing, I think, social media for just because you want to say something, but you're actually trying to drive sales for your business. So I don't know what your comments are on that or what you think.
So like Greg was just saying, likes don't equal comments, and that's more than just like an opinion, it's science based off of how social media platforms are created and how their algorithms work. So if you go to our WSSW Startup Week page on our site, there are some additional resources about social intelligence, which is the science behind social media and how users engage, and that psychology. So I won't dive all into that because that's a whole nother conversation, but likes don't always translate to sales because you're building that community. So after you build community, you build relationships, you're going to start building that loyalty. So when your customers, your followers are loyal to your brand and they feel personally connected to you, that's when they're going to convert. You can't just drive them to, buy something now and, be like, hey, you just followed me, will you buy my product? Because then it's going to undermine your relationship. You need to really consider social media relationships just like you would your relationships personally in your real life. You're not going to just go up to somebody that you just met and you're like, hey, we should be friends, and then be like, hey, I work here, will you buy all of my products? Because then they're not going to want to be your friend. They're going to be like, I literally just met you. So focus on that relationship. And so what I'm going to talk about right now is how you can use that social media aspect to dive into lead generation, which it's a longer process when you do it correctly, because you're not, like I said, you're not going to just dive in and be like, buy this, buy this, buy this. You're going to create those relationships that become lifetime customers because they're loyal. So build your brand by posting organic content. If you're trying to grow your startup, your small business, post daily, because that's going to tie into every social media algorithm, and you're going to have more exposure, more higher reach, higher impressions, and a lot more opportunity to engage on a more personal level. So with that brand building, you want to show who your business is, create and maintain those relationships. So then after you've built yourself organically, then you can start running ads, but they need to be very goal-driven and strategic. So I like to kind of break it up of that 80-20 rule, right? Where 20% is more promotional. Then we have some ads on top that are going to be a little different because those are targeting sales. You want something that's very specific audience that's going to increase your reach and your ability to succeed. Use Facebook Ad Manager, or it's very complex, so just do some stuff to make sure you do it correctly. Then you want your call to action, your buttons, everything to be very specific to your audience and open so you can drive people and invite them to convert. Rather than being like kind of forcefully salesy, it's more of that conversation. And then what I like to say is like create things that are specific for ads. Not only are ads different sizes, so you don't want to just use a random post that you've already done and it get cut off or blown up or whatever, but make them exclusive for the ad. So if you're trying to sell a new ebook, talk about the ebook. Don't just share a post that you've already done before. This is really, really, really where that strategy comes in. You need to be strategic about building your brand and growing your brand simultaneously, growing sales, building relationships. So with that, I just want to talk about some of the biggest, like frequently asked questions that we get about social media. And some of these we've already kind of talked about. But like I was saying, build organically first and then run ads is so critical. A lot of startups dive headfirst into running ads and they run into a lot of problems because your pages aren't built yet. You have zero credibility and you have zero relationships. So if you focus on that organic content, you're going to build your brand. And then when you launch ads, people aren't going to think you're a scam or spam. So if you think about it as yourself as a user, when you see an ad, most of the time, and most people, it's like over 70% of users will go to that profile before they make a purchase. So if you think about it that way, if you run an ad and you have nothing on your Instagram or nothing on your Facebook, what would you think as a consumer? Would you think it's a real business? Probably not. Or if you only have like 2 posts and they're stock photography and it seems a little sketchy, you probably would not buy from that brand. So try to position yourself in that mindset of the consumer and what you would think if you were receiving that ad. So that's probably one of my biggest pieces of advice is build organically, then run ads. And when you run ads, make sure they correlate with your organic content because you don't want to look like a completely different brand organically versus your ads. Then the other one next would be following accounts to grow your account. We get the question a lot of, should I just follow every local business or every single person that follows me? Should I follow them back? And I say no, because as a brand, you should be picky. You should be following people and other brands that are mutually beneficial. If you launch your startup, if you launch your brand and you just follow 1,000 people, again, it's going to look more like a scam or that you're desperate than your true brand that's growing. Only follow accounts that add value to you and you can add value to. So that kind of ties back to those collaborations in that community. Like, sure, if you have some strong consumer followers that are like influencers, sure, follow them back, but don't follow every single person.
Hey,
Then,
Renee.
yeah.
I wanted to say we have a question come in about, do you have to run paid ads on social platforms or can you just do promo posts to guide them to your website for purchases? And I think there's two different strategies wrapped in that question. So
Yeah,
I thought maybe if
absolutely.
you have time, you could maybe run through those because I know when we run social ads for our clients and things like that, there's different ways.
Yeah, definitely. So, like Greg said, there are different strategies here. So if you can definitely do those promotional posts and guide people to your website to make a purchase. 10 out of 10 recommend doing that. That would fall into your like 20% promotional content. And you can even kind of tie some of those in subtly with your 80%. Like whatever your product is, say you're selling mugs. Okay, so you can do a post about camping and going on an adventure and then tie it back to like, oh, and we have these awesome mugs that will help enhance your adventure. And then you can tie it to your brand, but it's still not straight up like buy our mugs. The other way of running those paid ads is you want to be very strategic, like I was saying. So come up with your goal. Do you want to drive people to a certain product or just your page in general? And track it. So you can come up with those like product salesy ads. And there's so many different ways. On Facebook, you're able to do like different gallery ones, shop now, all of those elements. So you just need to assess what's going to be best for your goals. And with that, I never recommend boosting posts because of how the social algorithms work. They're actually ineffective in the long run. So if you do plan to run an ad on your social media platforms for sales, you need to be strategic. And totally, if you're running something like the mugs example, you launch a new mug, you have a cool ad that's, the mug on a trail or whatever, and that's your paid ad. And you also have a couple posts on your page that are talking about, here are 5 camping tips. Oh, and by the way, we have this awesome mug. They're going to go together seamlessly. So I hope that answers your question. And if you want to talk more about ads and kind of like that ad strategy, definitely reach out to us. So my last like 2 tidbits here before I open up to all your questions is we already said don't auto post on Instagram and Facebook. And lastly, embrace your brand. So like I've been really pounding this whole time of focusing on your brand personality and your tone of voice, also brand stuff. Like throw your logo on a post, make sure it's visible, or make sure you have a very strong look and feel that ties people back to your brand. Because if you think of how people use social media, it's visual first. So you see a post, and if it's very recognizable that it's GROWL because it has like our GROWL stamp on it, people might stop and read it versus it just being a plain stock photo that has no tie to our brand. Because on average, people spend 1.7 seconds on a single piece of content. And if you don't engage them in that time, if you don't stand out in that very, very short amount of time, then they're going to keep scrolling. They're going to move on. So that's why I want to say, like, embrace your brand. Make sure you really just accentuate it across everything, because that's going to drive those relationships. It's going to drive awareness, loyalty, and sales. So now I just want to open up to any questions that you guys might have for the, what do we have left, like last couple minutes, and then totally I'll just put this slide up. You can connect with us on our website. We have our growlagency.com/connects. We have a bunch of different resources from webinars that we do. The /WSSW Startup Week page has the workbook. We'll have the metrics page once this ends, and then some other social blogs. And you can email me directly or reach out to us on social. So any last questions or wrapping it up? Well, okay.
I think you did good, Renee. So I don't see any other. Great job. If anybody has anything, they can reach out to us directly and reach out to Renee, and we'll be glad to walk you through anything. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you guys all for showing up.